I've been hiking alone since before I had my driver's license. This past summer, I spent hundreds of miles alone on the Colorado Trail in my goal to run it. If you haven't seen those videos, you can check out my channel. Shameless plug. I bumped into many people that are surprised that I'm comfortable alone on trails. I want to share my experience and skills mitigating risks on trails so that you feel comfortable to be on trail alone yourself.
Hi, I'm Sandra, and I'm an occupational therapy student and amateur outdoors adventurer, and I'm documenting and sharing little bits of my life just to remember the good, the bad, and the best, so stick around for some good times.
First and foremost, I know we've all seen scary documentaries, but the biggest threat while you're outside is going to be Mother Nature herself. Exposure is going to be a thing that causes the most harm most of the time, so I like to say be over-prepared. Even on short hikes, bring lots of water, lots of nutrition, and a first aid kit. I have a permanent first aid kit in every single bag that I take out standard on hikes. So that's typically my running pack, and then my hiking backpack. I always know that it's stocked. If I use something, I go home and restock it right away. Or I always carry ibuprofen, Benadryl, as well as band-aids and gauze. And then if I know that I'm doing something more technical, I adjust my first aid kit for that. And then the last way to be prepared is having layers. In the summer, I always carry a rain jacket. I live in Colorado and do most of my hiking in Colorado. You can always expect the unexpected with a thunderstorm in the afternoon on a beautiful July day. So a rain jacket is pretty standard in my summer kit. And then when it comes to winter hikes, my layers shift a lot, but I carry a lot more layers. My next tip is to always let someone know what your plans are. With that, let people know what to do should they not hear from you. Share your location, share your estimated times for being done, as well as sharing your estimated times for being home and a worst case scenario time. And then what the person that you're sharing this information should do if they don't hear from you at any of these points. For example, if I'm gonna go for a trail run, I might know that I'm not gonna have service at the trail head, but I'll still share what time I expect to start, how far I expect to go, where I expect to turn around, or if it's a loop, what loop I'm doing, when I expect to be back, when I might be back if things go slow, so like you should be concerned at this time if you don't hear from me, as well as when I expect to be home, but also letting them know if they don't hear from me by a certain point, what they should do. That includes if you want them to just go to the trail and see if your car is there, and if you want them to contact search and rescue right away, letting them know what they should do if they don't hear from you at a certain time is part of sharing your plans, and I feel like that's a part that often gets forgotten. If you're hiking alone, it's not the time to get adventurous. If you find a cool peak that you want to bushwhack to, great, come back with a friend, but when you're alone, always stay on clearly marked trails. Can I stress that enough? When you're alone, do not leave the trail. The trail is clearly marked and it's easy to backtrack if you need to. It's also far easier to stay unlost on trails. That made no sense. It's also a lot harder to get lost if you're on a trail. If you do happen to get into a situation where you are lost or injured on your hike, it will be easier and safer for search and rescue crews or other people to find you or happen to come across you if you're on trail than if you're off trail, because nobody is wandering off trail because they're all smart and they don't go off trail. The next tip kind of circles back to my first tip. Well, people might not be your biggest threat. Animals are a threat while you're in nature, and you should be prepared for them. There are big animals like bears and mountain lions. I always carry bear spray and a fixed blade knife. I have those in accessible pockets on the front of my pack. What?
That is not true. Practice what you preach. I would love for your bear spray to be on the front of your pack.
My knife is always on the front of my pack. I'm a trail runner. I don't have space on the front of my pack. You made me lose my train of thought. Other animals that you might run into, like moose or deer, keep your distance. This is their space and they are wild animals. A lot of people think moose aren't dangerous, but they are super dangerous. So give them a good chunk of distance. If a moose ever does charge at you, try to get behind a tree because they're not too quick. And some other animals are like rattlesnakes or different types of snakes tend to like to be on trails where the sun can hit them, especially in the early morning or early evening. And I always carry Benadryl in case I get a bee sting or a wasp bite, control my inflammatory response to those situations. Those are some things you can do to make sure you're prepared for animals, but do recognize that you are going into nature and that is their home. So it is quite likely that at some point you'll run into some sort of critter, and it's best to just give them their space. Never feed wild animals. Don't do that. My next tip is just to be aware of your own physical limitations, whether it's you're feeling exhaustion or fatigue, as well as like temperature control. Yeah, don't be afraid to turn around if any of these things start to creep up on you. It's better to err on the side of caution than to get to a point where you can't move anymore. One other physical limitation that you might not think of would be like a fear factor. I'm afraid of heights, so if there's any exposure on a trail, I tend to freeze up. It's something that we're working on. If anyone has any advice, let me know. But I know that I can't do trails with exposure alone, and if I'm not expecting hiking exposure on a trail and I see that there's a segment that is exposed to heights, I'll just turn around and not deal with it, because the worst thing that could happen would be for me to power through, get halfway through that section and just like freeze up and not be able to get back or forward on that section and be stuck there. So just be aware of your own physical limitations. If you're starting to feel fatigued, just turn around and head back to your car. These are not the times to take risks in order to see something cool. Like, you're alone on the trail, you got outside, that's enough of an accomplishment. Go home and stay alive. This one's less a safety tip for your physical self, and more just like a general don't do this. Don't leave valuables in your car when you're hiking. Trailheads are infamous for being a spot where people break into cars, and especially if you're leaving valuables out, people are going to come dig for those. So if you have a wallet, just bring it with you in your pack. I know you probably feel like you might lose that wallet, but it's going to suck a lot more to come back to the car while you're tired with a window smashed and all of your money gone than having a wallet in a zippered pocket in your pack that you're not unzipping while you're on the trail. Like, don't leave it in your car. And then my last tip is just general awareness for your surroundings. I did say people are probably your least likely threat on trail, but I don't have any statistics to back that up, so we should just be aware of our surroundings, and both for wildlife's sake and general safety. So typical safety things are, if you're listening to music, only have one headphone in. Just be aware of who's around and where they are in your space. If you have a dog, bring him along. Dogs love to hike, and they're also a natural deterrent. With all that being said, happy trails. I hope you stay safe. If you have any other recommendations, leave them below, and please feel free to subscribe. I'd love to hit 100 subscribers before the end of the year. Thanks for watching.